Hi, I'm Locke Meredith. On the next legal lines, coming up today, we've got Darrell Ourso. He's a Metro Councilman for East Baton Rouge Parish, District 9, and he's running for tax assessor. We've got the runoff on November 5th, just coming up shortly in a couple of weeks. And Darrell's going to talk about his duties and responsibilities as a Metro Councilman and why he is running for tax assessor. So join us on the next Legal Lines. See you there. Welcome. I'm Locke Meredith on Legal Lines. We're very pleased to have on the show today with us Darrell Ourso. He is a Metro Councilman in East Baton Rouge Parish, and he's also running for tax assessor. So we're going to talk to him about both of those things. Darrell, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Talk to me. Give me a little personal history about yourself. You married, kids?
Right. My wife and I, Ajel, we've been married since 1987. We have 2 children. Amanda is soon to be 8, and Daniel will be 4 in January. We've been residents of Southeast Baton Rouge since 1988. I'm originally a native of Donaldsonville. I moved to Baton Rouge in '82 when I attended LSU. My wife and I met at LSU, and she's from New Orleans, and we both decided to make Baton Rouge our home.
The rest is history.
The rest is history.
What did you graduate in?
Graduated in history. So.
And give me a little history as to what you've done since you graduated.
Since I've graduated, or the time while I was going to LSU, I was working in banking. I spent 15 years in banking. 12 of those years were with City National Bank. I left City National shortly before they became Bank One and went over to Whitney and spent a couple of years over at Whitney. And so most of my history, most of my background, my educational background, my work experience is in banking, and have been on the Metro Council, was elected in 1999, and have served the people of Southeast Baton Rouge since that time.
Yeah, I think you took over Patty Jo Robique's seat, is that right, when she retired?
Right. Patty Jo resigned due to a possible issue with her son-in-law taking a position with the police department. It was a special election then, and it's certainly been a rewarding experience ever since.
Tell me about that, because we had the Mayor Bobby Simpson on a couple of shows ago, and he kind of gave us his perspective from his position as mayor, and I'm curious to get your perspective as a Metro Councilman. He did say that our particular Metro Council in Baton Rouge is very powerful because they're involved in almost all, if not all, the decisions.
Right. The plan of government, which was approved by the voters 50-plus years ago, establishes the mayor's position as a full-time administrative position. The Metropolitan Council is comprised of 12 individually elected council members from council districts, and the plan of government, by definition and by state statute, requires us to, or we are part-time council members, so we're not a full-time position, but we are the legislative branch of government. So we are the checks and balance between the administration and some part of the judicial system, at least for appropriating monies to the courts. So with 7 votes of the council, a mayor can have his initiatives placed and put on, his agenda approved. So yes, we are fairly powerful in that regard, because the mayor does need 7 votes in terms of appropriating money, approving legislation, or entering into contracts.
So the big picture for our local government is really like the federal government. We got a president,
correct,
on the federal scene, which would be the mayor. We've got Congress, which would be you guys, and then we have the judiciary, Supreme Court, and all that stuff, which would be our judicial system.
Courts, and
example of the judges we've had on the show.
Correct.
Okay. Right. You are District 9.
Correct.
And you said there's 12 districts.
12 districts, right.
And every one of those districts has their own Metro Council
Correct,
person.
right. There's no one is elected at large. Everyone is elected from a single member district. And the way the council works is we have 4 meetings or 5 meetings a month. The first and third Wednesday we meet for our committee meetings. We have the Capital Improvements Committee and the Finance and Executive Committee. Then the second and fourth Wednesday are full council meetings where we all come together as a 12-member body, the whole body. And then we also meet on the third Wednesday for zoning issues. So all zoning matters that are approved or that are heard before the Planning Commission will be heard by the council zoning meeting the third Wednesday of the month.
And those things only come to you guys after they've been reviewed by Planning and Zoning Commission?
Correct, right.
Okay. In fact, the mayor, I remember in our interview with him, indicated that, I think in Baker, where he was also mayor, they did have some at-large council members, and you said we don't.
Right.
What do you think of that? Because he said the one difficulty, although he says it's not really a difficulty that he may encounter, is that each council person, it's like they're in charge of that district, and that's what they care about, and so that's what they're focused on because that's their job.
Right.
And they don't have any other folks on there that kind of look at the big picture. He's the only guy. What do you think? Do you agree with that, or do you see it as an issue?
I think in some cases most council members look at the big picture, because they understand that whenever they make a vote, it has a consequence to the community as a whole. So I think you certainly have zoning issues which are more localized because of the area, the landowners, the residents, that the council member is more intimately involved with the zoning case. But on some of the other issues that are beyond just that council district, I think you have a cooperation with the council members.
That makes sense. So if it's a very localized within your district issue, they're pretty much going to defer to the particular council person for that district.
Right. In many cases that does happen, although we have seen situations where other council members have exhibited their independence, and it has happened with me, and I've also done the same. You have 12 people, and you don't always have 12 identical.
Like a jury, I imagine.
That's right, exactly. So you do have cases where someone will look at it or interpret a decision differently and vote the way they feel should be voted.
It's pretty clear to everybody up there when it's basically a whole big picture issue, and most folks or most council persons view it that way?
Right.
Okay. Those issues would be primarily what? Finances?
I think, especially when you get into appropriating funds, you're looking at different areas of the community see an appropriation of funds differently based on their constituent needs. Sometimes it's hard to convince, well, recently, for example, the arts block was a $2.2 million expenditure over a 3-year period. Well, it's going to really focus on downtown. This was a result of $50-something million of state and individual funds being put up, and the city parish was asked to contribute $2.2 million over a 3-year period to do landscaping, lightscaping, and to do some
So we only had to put up $2 million or so to get
$50+ million investment, right? And there were some issues that we could use this money elsewhere for salary benefits or appropriating capital improvement projects throughout the city or the parish. So those issues sometimes do create some unpleasant moments, I guess, or tense moments, because people have issues in their own districts that they would like to see addressed, and it's difficult. But then again, you look at the amount of money that we had before us, $2 million investment for a $50+ million investment.
Yeah, that doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure
Correct.
out. How do y'all deal with the financial issues if, let's say, in fact, the mayor indicated that there was very limited, really discretionary money after you have to deal with the mandated expenditures? I think he only said there was maybe $2 million or so that was really available to do any additional stuff.
I'm not sure exactly, but you do have some funds that come in which are non-recurring, although they have been recurring for several years, and one is the gaming revenue that we receive from the boats. Some of that goes to the sewer system to offset some of the cost of the sewer system, and toward the end of the year we do have some leftover funds that we can use to improve some intersections in each council district. So there are different ways that we can do things with some of the discretionary funds to improve areas that have been waiting on the list, or some things that develop throughout the year. It's difficult to try to match that and appropriate that over 12 council districts.
Yeah, there's not enough.
There's not enough. And that is one of the issues that, government's job is to deliver services, and I think the people want to make sure that we deliver those services in an efficient manner. Unfortunately, you have more and more demands being placed on the city parish on their services that are being delivered. So in this past year or two, we've had some reductions in the budget, and you've seen a little cutback on some of the services, and that does cause some concern with the constituents.
Well, what I'd like to talk to about on the next segment is basically what issues you see that we face as a council and a city, and how you think they'll be addressed. Locke Meredith with Legal Lines, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Locke Meredith with Legal Lines, and we're very pleased to have on the show today Darrell Ourso. He's a Metro Councilman for East Baton Rouge Parish, District 9. Again, Darrell, thanks for being with us. We were talking about the issues that you see commonly faced by the Metro Council, the issues that you think we're going to face as a city in the next few years, and maybe what changes that you would maybe propose.
Right. I think some of the most important issues that the council is faced with, or one of the most important issues, is in a zoning perspective, because Baton Rouge really didn't have a zoning plan put in place until the mid-'80s.
That's the Horizon Plan?
The Horizon Plan, correct. And the Horizon Plan was never intended to be a document that once it was approved, it remained as is. So it's
not a constitution.
Right.
It's flexible.
It is flexible, and I think when you try to work with the public and you make changes to that, they feel like, well, why do we have it if we're not going to follow it. But people's patterns change, their lives change, they move from one area to another. Businesses want to locate where residential populations are to succeed. Several people, if you listen to the radio shows and read the newspaper, they will write letters or make comments that Baton Rouge doesn't have any planning. Well, one of the challenges that we do have planning, we've never had the funding to implement all aspects of the planning, because the Horizon Plan was not simply a zoning issue. It was also funding improvements to roads and bridges and drainage projects. Infrastructure. And between 1974 and 1994, there were 6 bond issues that were put before the voters for capital improvement projects, and those bond issues were rejected. So, we have a 20 or 30-year process where we've gone into the zoning aspects, but we've never implemented all the other pieces of the Horizon Plan to make the city move forward.
So what we've got is a really relatively fast-growing city.
Exactly.
With an old infrastructure that can't deal with the needs of a much larger population.
We're on the pay-as-you-go plan. I mean, we tried to get them, the previous elected officials tried to get money before to do the projects, bond them out, but the voters were, they made a decision, so now we're paying as you go. So it does present some challenges, and unfortunately it falls to those who are sitting in the office presently to handle these issues and to deal with them.
And primarily those issues, I guess, would be sewage and drainage and traffic. Roads.
Correct, right. Those are the three most, the top 3.
Now I know back kind of when I was dabbling in some of that stuff, Fred Rayford, who is a workhorse, because of the lack of an infrastructure, really started kind of using impact fees to start helping defer the costs associated with growth.
Right.
Tell me about that. Are we still doing that?
We are still doing that, and what we're doing now...
What is an impact fee?
An impact fee is you look at the development, the size of it, the amount of traffic, the land area, all those components that have an impact on the intersection or the road that is leading to that location. And how many additional cars or trips will be made by the vehicles, how much water runoff will be made, how much additional capacity into the sewer system. So all of those components are figured out by this new development, and they are assessed a fee based on that impact to the system, to the infrastructure.
For example, I know on Corsi looks like a huge apartment development going up. It used to be years ago that would have gone up. They wouldn't have paid any fees or expense associated with the impact it would have had on the infrastructure. Residents would live there. Ultimately, they'd suffer the consequences, and we'd all pay for that.
Right.
That's different now.
It is different, yeah. And in speaking of that apartment complex, there were certain issues with putting zoning in place that some properties were grandfathered in, so that a particular complex was already zoned for the apartment complex, multi-unit housing, C2, heavy commercial. So there are certain issues throughout the parish also that these grandfathered properties do create some challenges, because you can do a great deal of development on a C2 property, but in this area there was a private and a public venture to improve the sewer capacity at the Market Street, which is the corner of Corsi and Jones Creek. So that development with that project was approved and done with a joint venture.
So what we've got is everybody participating in the cost now, and the decision-making process from what I'm observing.
Yeah, I think that you have to have good growth. I mean, some people are anti-development, but if you have good growth, and that is the direction your city wants to go, because you have a healthy city.
Organized and logical growth.
Right, correct. So that's the thing that I've tried to encourage while on the council. I think I've supported most of the good growth issues in my district and throughout the parish as well. And people, you can appreciate that. People can see what are good development projects, and then you also know what are not good development projects.
Yeah, it seems like years ago it was kind of like pretty much anything went, and it seems like now it's much more of a coalition building, get everybody involved in the process, let everybody speak their mind, see if they're raising issues we haven't considered, and then logically deal with this.
Well, and then also the citizens have, I would say banded together, but the citizens have joined with the development community. The Federation, the Greater Baton Rouge Federation of Civic Associations.
They have a growth coalition.
The Growth Coalition. So these bodies regularly meet, and they also are meeting as friends, if you will, because sometimes homeowners and developers don't always agree. Yeah. But with the Federation, with the Growth Coalition, the Capital Region Builders Association, other groups have band together to support and to work with each other to make sure that the best development is happening in East Baton Rouge Parish. And I think we are certainly on the beginning of another 10-year phase days. I know we had 10 real good years under Mayor McHugh, and I think that we're in a little slowdown right now, but I think you'll see things pick up shortly, and again, the quality of the development will continue to make Baton Rouge a better place to live.
What your time constraints, as you mentioned when we were off a little bit, you got a full-time job, and yet the job that you have as Metro Council person is pretty time-consuming.
Right.
What would you do, if anything, to change that? Or is there a way to restructure activities that you have to be involved in that maybe wouldn't require your presence or something like that?
That is the challenge, trying to balance the family, the work, and the council work, because the demands of the council depends on the district that you represent. If you have a great deal of zoning cases on your agenda, then that requires more time to meet with the residents, to meet with the developers.
You guys will be down there on zoning nights, what, till 12?
Not yet. By law, we have a limit of a 4-hour meeting, and although we've extended it a half an hour a couple of times.
I can remember a few times where it sure seemed late.
Right, but on an issue such as a Walmart, if I use a store name, those do take on a life of their own, and they do take on a greater amount of time with your schedule. But trying to balance everything, the Planning Commission regularly reviews waivers and ordinances that affect zoning decisions, and they're always trying to find a way to, if it's not a controversial issue or not an issue of a large waiver that will have an impact on the residential community, they will try to take some of those responsibilities away from the council by changing the Planning Commission and the council procedures. So there are things that are always under review. That we talked about the Growth Coalition, the Federation, even the Planning Commission has an advisory committee that regularly studies the Unified Development Code, and the Unified Development Code is the large book that governs development in our parish.
Now, I don't think folks really appreciate the service that, at least I know I didn't, the service that you guys provide, because you're not paid much of anything. And how many hours a week do you think you spend?
Probably 10 to 15 hours on an average. It may be more, again, depending upon the agenda for zoning cases. So it's a rough. It's difficult to quantify, because I'll spend a lot of time on emails at home.
Because that's there, and I know you meet with constituents and constantly doing stuff.
Correct.
And I know that you are now pondering. I mean, that's a significant public service. And I know you're now pondering running for tax assessor.
Right.
Why don't we talk about that in the next segment?
Good.
All right, we'll be right back. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. Welcome back. I'm Locke Meredith with Legal Lines, and again we have on the show Darrell Ourso. He is a Metro Councilman for East Baton Rouge Parish, District 9, and he's also running for tax assessor, and that's what we're going to talk to him about now. Darrell, tell me about that. Why do you want to be tax assessor?
Well, thank you, Locke. If you look at the importance of the assessor's function in our community, the assessor's job is to determine the taxable value for all property. The sheriff collects it, and the government spends the revenue from the taxes. So in terms of having an accurate forecasting for government to know what is available, you have to have fairness in the assessment process, and that's one of the things that I want to bring to the office.
All right, so the assessor, the position that you're running for is assessor for East Baton Rouge Parish?
Correct. It is parish-wide.
So what we're talking about is property taxes on folks who live in East Baton Rouge Parish, collecting that money, the sheriff does that,
right.
Give it to our local government, of which you are currently a participant,
right.
To spend for services that come back to the citizens who
Correct.
pay the taxes.
Exactly.
Okay. Tell me what it is about the current system, if anything, that you think is not quite working right.
Well, in terms of the office, it is a well-run office, and it is so well-run that there's a $3.2 million surplus, and it costs $2.7 million to operate the office.
Okay, let me make sure I understand what you're telling me. So there's $3.2 million sitting in a bank account somewhere for this particular tax assessor's office?
Right.
Okay.
And
why?
The money has been collected from the taxpayers and never been put back to use to update and modernize the office.
So that's what you do with the money?
Right. I would think that the computers that the office that they have in place are probably not sufficient. Most of the people that go into the office to do research are directed to a card catalog, a yellow index card, or the big blue books. And I think we can do a little better. It's 2002, and here we are. Computer technology is not very expensive, and the use of it is very easy for people to use. So I think we need to give the employees in the office some great tools to deliver the services to the consumers and to the public.
How many employees with the assessor?
There are 50 deputy assessors in the office.
And those guys do their job well. It's just they need better tools.
Right. And I think also you can look at delivering services in a more efficient manner. We have a court location, a clerk's office on Coursey Boulevard, and we also have a complex in Baker on Main Street. We can have 4 or 5 of the employees go to each of those 2 offices, and that would be their new location where they would deliver the services to the public. Because, as you mentioned, it is for East Baton Rouge Parish. So if you're in Central or Zachary or Baker or South Baton Rouge, every time you purchase a home, this current assessor's practice is to make you drive downtown to file a homestead exemption. Just that one step can be completed at an additional location, or even more so, when you're signing all the papers to purchase your house with the closing attorney, you can have one more sheet included, and that would make it much more convenient.
And he would just mail it to you guys?
Well, actually, the closing attorney sends everything to the clerks. The clerk is upstairs or downstairs or across the hall. They can just walk that downstairs or across the stairs, across the hall, and give it to the assessor. So it can be easily done.
What services other than... well, let me ask it this way. What services does the assessor provide, or what are the duties and responsibilities? The
duties, again, is basically to assess the property.
And what does that mean, assess the property?
His job, or the assessor's job, is to determine the value, the taxable value for land. And as a taxpayer, we all approve or disapprove, vote down taxes. So if we approve a new tax, that new tax millage is assessed against the value of your home. It could be for the park system, the libraries, the school board, police.
That's where the money goes?
That's where the money goes. So the assessor's role is like a referee in a football game. He has a set of rules that he has to apply fairly. And the taxpayer is one team, and the governmental units are the other team. So if you're the taxpayer, and if you're overtaxed, you feel like you're being penalized. But if you're a governmental entity relying on tax revenue, if you're underfunded, you can't deliver the services the public expects, and therefore you have to look at other measures to tax or to get revenue, and it's either you do budget cuts, or you raise fees, or you have higher fines. So it has to all work hand in hand, where the assessor's role is very critical in making sure government operates with sufficient revenue.
So how do you go out and you have in the tax assessor's office appraisers that go out to every single piece of property here in East Baton Rouge Parish, and they prepare an estimate of the value of the property?
Right. There's over 193,000 parcels of land in East Baton Rouge Parish, and the state legislature is the governing authority in terms of making the rules for the assessor's office. And the legislature has a law that says every 4 years all property must be reassessed.
That was my next question.
Right. So 2004 is the next reassessment year.
So no matter who the tax assessor is, all the property in East Baton Rouge Parish is going to be reappraised for value?
Correct. Okay. In 2004. Now, how you do that is there are 2 different approaches. You can physically go out and do that, which the office has already admitted they do not have all the information on many homes in our parish to do so. So if you don't have the information, you have to acquire the information. Another way that...
How would you do that?
You physically have to go out and measure all the homes.
With 50 employees?
With 50 employees.
So you can't do that.
It would be quite a challenge. Another way is a computer-assisted mass appraisal software system, which other assessors throughout the state are now using to apply a neighborhood value, a neighborhood average to the value of homes. So they're looking at unique neighborhoods and unique features of each neighborhood and coming up with an average value for that particular area.
Now, what happens if you come out and you appraise my house and you say it's worth $1 gazillion million, and I say, ain't no way?
Right.
How do I have that reconsidered?
There's still an appeal process that's set up by the Louisiana Tax Commission. You would first go to the local assessor and explain to him or her what your concerns are, and if you don't receive resolution there, then you would go forward to the tax commission to make that complaint to the next step. So certainly the process is set by law. That doesn't change, but the homeowner or the property owner certainly has an appeal process if they disagree with the assessed value.
Okay. And so your game plan is basically to update the office so that it can provide its mandated responsibilities quicker. Correct. And more efficiently, and I guess cheaper.
Right.
And what you're telling me is the office actually has the resources with this $3.2
million
to do that.
Right. Exactly.
Interesting. Why would folks elect you over the opponent that you have?
Well, I bring to the my qualifications: 15 years in banking, 17 years professional experience, 3 years of leadership in government, participated in numerous volunteer organizations. I attended and graduated the Leadership Greater Baton Rouge class in 2002, which is a program offered through the Chamber. It's a 10-month program where you study all components of our community: healthcare, education, crime, government, the court system. So you look at all aspects of the community, and through that program I've really have an appreciation, much more so than ever before, of how this parish operates. Being on the council, as you mentioned earlier, 3 years as a leader in the government.
I imagine that gives you kind of some contacts that maybe your opponent doesn't have, I guess.
Well, I think I've demonstrated to the public my abilities to deal with tough issues, because when you apply fairness, I think some people will feel that they're treated unfairly, but making sure that everyone is treated fairly in the process, and having everyone pay a fair share of their tax burden is certainly what I want to do in the office.
Have you been endorsed by any particular groups?
Yes, I have received the endorsement of the Republican Party, and the Greater Baton Rouge Association of Realtors both have endorsed my candidacy.
And I guess there's no really organized group of residential folks that would endorse any particular candidate, is that
No,
right?
but I think if you look at the election outcome on October 5th, 69% of the people that voted for someone other than the individual in the office to lead it to the next level.
Well, I think that probably makes sense, given the fact we got $3.2 million sitting in there.
Right.
Darrell, thank you so much for being on the show, and best wishes on the election.
Appreciate it.
This is Legal Lines with Locke Meredith. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time.